We're probably Scotland's youngest space company, I should think, and probably the first spin-off from the UK Spaceport programme. So we're based at Prestwick. Here's a quick view of Prestwick in earlier this year in the spring. Prestwick is a big World War II airfield. You can see it was the home of all of the transatlantic ferry traffic during the Second World War. All of the North American assets flew here, and Prestwick owes its infrastructure to that period of wartime investment. But today, it's all about industry. General Electric, Spirit Aerosystems, BA Systems Regional Aircraft. We've been manufacturing aircraft at Prestwick since the late 40s. So it's a very strong aerospace unit. And Orbital Access has been formed, and NATS, that is, to the home of all of the UK's northern air traffic control, right out to the middle of the Atlantic at Prestwick. Orbital Access is formed out of the real gap that the Spaceport programme identifies. Yes, Prestwick is bidding to be one of the UK spaceport. If there's going to be more than one, I think there almost inevitably will. And yes, it meets all of the requirements in terms of what it takes to launch a space operation. But the real question is, we don't have any space launch systems for any of the 10 or 11 US spaceports, let alone any space launch systems for any in the UK. So the gap in this marketplace is all about space launch, and we've heard it from many players today. Is how do we put commercial payloads into orbit at the right price, at the right time, into the right orbit, and do so reliably and not with high risk associated with very experimental vehicles. And so Orbital Access has been set up expressly to answer that question, collaborating with BA Systems, with some American rocket development players, with other players at Prestwick and other players in the UK. We're setting up and have just begun fundraising for a very commercially grounded small-sat launch program aimed at a payload of around 450 kilograms to low Earth orbit, and that becomes the primary, the primary system. And following on beyond that, conscious that the cost per kilo demands of the marketplace are going to go down, we have to be looking at what comes next as well at the same time. So whilst we will develop a system to meet today's requirements for Clyde Space and Surrey Satellites and others, their demands in 10 years' time are going to be that much lower in terms of cost per kilo. So we have to start that next generation launcher development now as well. So that's the second aspect in launch systems in our program. But the real value ultimately comes through the launch services that we will offer. And I suppose anybody who's looked at the space launch sector, there are really three elements to that. Commercial sat launch is by far and away the largest market sector. We've seen the SpaceWorks statistics earlier. Space tourism, is that a long-term market? Nobody really knows. There's a couple of operators developing craft. Who knows whether the rate of new bookings will outstrip the rate at which the existing bookings are exhausted. Nobody can answer that question. It's a question mark. And you can't build a spaceport on the commercial prospects of space tourism today. And the final thing is delivering products to the academic and research community, whether it's microgravity research with zero-G flying, which we can do off carrier aircraft that are not then being used for launching rockets, or whether it's carrying research payloads in small craft to microgravity environments. That's the main business. And of course, you can't develop the launch systems without accessing a global market for those launch services. I don't think any market is going to be viable. The two elements at the bottom are very much spin-off aspects that come from that. Obviously, if you're running those launch services, then you're able to attract a certain amount of public footfall to your facility, and Prestwick enjoys some excellent connectivity and a big catchment area, so the concept of a proper UK space centre becomes a realistic option. and very much the Harwell guys, the opportunity for industry to cluster around that type of active opportunity is a focus for us in the long term. The real market footing for all of this is making, I think one of the previous speakers made the point, I think Mark made the point, it's all about how do you make a launch development business case make sense. And the answer to that is you have to deliver that service with that equipment on a global scale. You can't just look at that as a one-center operation. You have to be able to launch to different orbits, so you have to be equatorial, you have to be polar. You also have to access different geographic markets in terms of launch demand and demand for the service. And so the final piece in the orbital access picture is the development of a global spaceport alliance where that service can be delivered. And we're already in some very interesting first discussions in building the first steps in that network. So that's Scotland's newest space company. We look forward to launching Clyde satellites, Surrey satellites, and many more global products to orbit with our systems. And yes, hopefully it's the start of an exciting road. Thank you.